Now, 5 years ago this weekend, I was in Trafalgar Square at an anti-lockdown rally. And it was the first time I saw the police charge batons drawn against ordinary peaceful protesters. And I was horrified by how the Metropolitan Police acted that day. But I still got to give my speech and criticize them very, very heavily for what they did, as well as speaking up against lockdowns and the coming injections, which were the issue of the day 5 years ago. But also on the stage with me that day, actually emceeing the event in Trafalgar Square, was our next speaker. And I'm absolutely delighted that 5 years to the weekend, we have with us here in the Heritage Party Conference to speak to you about freedom and medical autonomy, Kate Shemirani. Thank you, Kate. Love to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is my first public speaking event since the murder of my daughter. And I say that today with all confidence. And everything I'm going to talk about today will solidify it, and I'll lead to that point. I don't normally take notes, but I don't want to waffle, and I want to lead it in. Now I can't see. In the last 5 years, almost 6 actually, I started in local radio, and I've been jailed for 32 hours. They didn't take my high shoes off me. I've been fined. I was criminalised, convicted, taken off the nursing register. I don't care. Put on a list to say that I'm a danger to vulnerable adults and children. I'm still under a police investigation now. Whatever, because there's nothing to fear but fear itself. So I'd like to say good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters in Christ. I am a Christian. It's an honour to stand before you today at the Heritage Party Conference in David Curtin. I remember that day well, being chased by hundreds of riot police and getting away in a disguise on another occasion. The Heritage Party has stood firm in reminding the nation of its roots, that England's laws, customs and liberties were indeed built upon God's laws. It's because of that foundation that we've enjoyed what we believed to be freedom, prosperity and order, but today, and really has always been, but the curtain is off, the David curtain, our foundation is under attack, and my subject is very simple and it's most profound: the sanctity of life. From a biblical and historical foundation, from the moment of conception to the moment of natural death, life is sacred. I've had the good fortune to be at the very beginning of life and to be at the very end of life, and even with my own child. It is ours, but it isn't ours to take. And it's not ours to dispose of, and it's not ours to redefine. Civilized societies have always been measured by how they treat the vulnerable. When societies abandon that duty, as Isabel's just told us, from the child sacrificing Aztecs to the totalitarian regimes of the last century, destruction always follows. The Spartans used to leave their babies on the shoreline if there was anything wrong with them. But they themselves literally were their own downfall. They wanted to practice eugenics to create the best warriors. They kept their gene pool very small. They only had a small group of women who they bred with, and disease followed. It's God's will that a child is put inside the womb, and it's God's will when that child is taken. England must remain a Christian nation, a nation that cherishes life, because once life is no longer sacred, nothing else is safe. We have eugenics. We've always had eugenics. I can tell you right now, which I'll go into, and some people might find it a little bit distasteful, but then I've never been known for tiptoeing around the truth. So I first talk about the unborn. Following on from Isabel's words, the womb, once the safest place for a child, has become the most dangerous. Abortion is now being pushed to the very day of delivery. And let me say clearly again, life begins at conception. Abortion is murder. In my very first job, I worked in a gynecology ward, and we would do between 5 and 15 abortions a week, up to 12 weeks. Recently, when I had fasted and prayed, I was immediately taken back during this prayer to the very first suction termination of pregnancy that I saw. Not a spontaneous abortion, which is a miscarriage, but a therapeutic, as they call it. There's nothing therapeutic about it. I went down with the woman from the ward. I remember the doctor's name. I remember I was wearing poison perfume. It had just come in. It was 1986. The sister, who's wearing that perfume? It was me. But I was remembering this in vision because the Lord was giving me this. This was my adversary. When I took my prayer to the courts of heaven, they showed me the first time I had the blood on my hands. And I watched that child, 12 weeks, ripped to pieces, suctioned, its skull crushed, and then the products of it looked at, separated, to make sure everything was there. Let's call it what it is. When we say it in such a way that is therapeutic, it's not. Later in my career, I worked within a theatre suite, and we would go and collect ladies from a gynecology ward. And those babies were prostaglandin terminations. Half of them were alive when they were born, but they were left in the sluice. They sounded like cats meowing. This happens today, madam. So we have to be very clear. We don't want to dress it up. We don't want to make it therapeutic. All babies born now are tested for 62 genetic tests, 62 genetic disorders. Those babies then can be used for entire systems for the organ donor. This is on the back of the Galleri trials. This is absolutely true. What do we say? I'm so sorry. Johnny has a genetic disorder. Would be kinder if we just feed him on demand, maybe just give him water if he cries. This happens. Let him perish. Pregnant mothers are bombarded with propaganda, pressured into vaccines, told lies about their choices. Children are being denied their first breath, not by accident, but by deliberate policy. We see many, many, many vaccines being added, but what about the chemicals in our environment? Children are being born, they don't know what they are. Because of all the xenoestrogens, the pesticides, the herbicides, the fungicides, it's attacking our children. Personal care products, makeup, deodorant, even the beloved Botox causes dysbiosis in the gut, collects in the lymph nodes around the breast, but now young girls are having it by the time they're 20. The young, from the earliest days, children are injection medicated. We see the new varicella, the HPV vaccine, where children can decide for themselves what they have because they've got the Gillick competency, which was actually done on the back of contraception, but they're now using it. Interestingly, a child can say that they want to have a vaccine, but they can't say that they don't want to have one. So that competency only works one way. The Department of Defense was given $10 million before 1970 and as an appropriation over 5 years to develop modified RNA that the body would have no defense against, even something as simple as Candida. They developed this. They developed 70,000 of these modified RNA, and they shipped them out to 500 labs by 1970, one being the CDC. These modified RNA are already here. They've been here a long time. It was from when these were developed that you saw the emergence of lymphoma, leukemia, and everything that they call AIDS-related disease. We have 10 billion miles of DNA in one genome sequence. 10 billion miles. It's quite fantastic. That's your binary code from the creator. You only need to take a piece out, put a piece in that shouldn't be there, take a piece from over here and translocate and put it over here, and it completely changes who you are from the creator. So let's move on to how it goes. Ambulance services use the British public in drug trials without their knowledge. The paramedic 1, 2, and 3 trials ran by Warwick University were done on the people of the United Kingdom. And that's now being used. The World Health Organization are advocating it. What is that? It's where you are given 1 milligram of adrenaline every 3 to 5 minutes. You can be given up to 10. A French study declared that by the 3rd dose, your brain is already sacrificed to get the heart started. Now, Southeast Coast Ambulance, and I live in the Southeast, pitched themselves now as a research body. They want to be the biggest in the world. That means they get funding. They did a study on the people of Sussex. It had a consent wavered. And half the people were going to get the adrenaline in their arm, in a wide bore cannula. My job, as I later went on, was at the busiest A&E in Europe, where I worked for 5 years. I did my advanced trauma and life support course. I'm an independent nurse prescriber. Well, I was. So I understood all these drugs. So 1 milligram every 3 to 5 minutes, either into your arm or into your leg with an intraosseous gun. Into your leg is of worst outcome, but they didn't tell the people of Sussex this. The paramedic takes the envelope as he goes out the door, and that tells him when he gets to this life-saving event, whether he's going to be doing it in the leg or the arm, and he has to then put in his payroll number. Warwick University, Gavin Perkins. So what happens during that? Well, 2.7% make it into the hospital. Just over 1% are alive a year later. Nobody was told that. Countries that don't use it have a much higher survival rate, but they're pushing this. Who? Teva Pharmaceuticals from Israel is the biggest provider of adrenaline. They have 4 bases in the UK. They've just given 4.5 million to Maidstone Hospital. They're employing lots of people. Merck makes adrenaline. Their market at the moment is 3.8 billion, and by 2032 their market's going to be projected at 7.11 billion. Why? They say there's going to be a greater need for adrenaline because of more anaphylaxis, more allergies, probably because we're going to see more cardiac events. The gun that is used, the intraosseous gun, which was ordinarily only used when you couldn't get a vein. If someone was in complete shutdown, maybe they didn't have any tissue left. It was a burns patient. Now everybody's getting it. Pharmaceutical profits demand it. The vulnerable and the sick. Our healthcare has lost its soul. Policies and protocols over patients. Staff who cannot speak English are put in charge of lives they cannot even understand. 44% of the nurses come from overseas, and they work through Acacium Worldwide Healthcare Agency. Interesting, I believe Rishi Sunak's wife is a major investor or shareholder. Hospital food is poison. What do we see in hospitals? Dunkin' Donut, McDonald's. Why is that there? We see the smallest budget for food. The smallest budget. It might be of interest to a lot of the nurses, well, who clearly don't know, otherwise they would be up in arms about it, that one requires a certain amount of protein for tissue synthesis. So if you're fed on garbage food, how on earth can you heal? What about if you're given foods that have got chemicals in them that promote tumour growth? Well, what about if you're given a drug that would open the blood-brain barrier because you've got brain tumours, you're a child, astrocytomas, and then you go off to get McDonald's, your parents do because you feel sick, and that's got the very chemical in it. It's like throwing petrol on a barbecue. My favourite topic, doctors receive bonuses for meeting drug targets. Come over to a wonderful resort. Come for 2 weeks, bring your family. You only need to come to the event for 1 day if you meet this target of using this oncology drug. Administrators get the same. They all enjoy golden handshakes while patients languish on waiting lists. It's not care. The NHS is a cult. It ranks in the lowest... How dare she say that? I dare. I've worked in it. It ranks in the lowest third in the world for treatments available, treatment outcomes, and waiting lists, yet we all have to pay into it. Even if we choose to pay Bupa, we have to pay into it. But now we see junior doctors have been given a 22% pay rise, but they're still striking. There was a time when it was seen as something you went into because of your love of your fellow man. We see consultants on huge, big golden handshake pensions. Anybody who's done economics will know that they are unsustainable. It is impossible to pay them. The elderly. I think we all class as elderly in here. Please forgive me if any of you are under 50. But over 50. We had the Galleri trial, which they looked at all these patients to see who might get cancer. And I believe something like a third of them that didn't even know it, then got treated. The assisted dying is being dressed up as compassion. In reality, it's euthanasia, it always was. It's not care at all. Again, it's a cult. Now, I remember the Liverpool Care Pathway. One day, the Liverpool Care Pathway was stopped. It was stopped. My friend, who's the godmother of my children, was a district nurse. The next day, it started on a new title, the next day, as end-of-life care. She said the only difference was, in the community, they would see 2 on air a month. Now it was at least 3 a week. I see that the Select Committee is going to investigate the assisted dying bill, and until the report is done and they report on it, they're going to wait. Well, we had the 2001 Prevention of Euthanasia Bill, Anne Winterton. Please read it. It's quite sobering, particularly one point about doctors. They can't be held accountable for so many things. Since May 2020, every citizen is considered an organ donor in the UK unless you opt out. But even opting out doesn't guarantee your safety, as families are pressured again. They play a lovely video. Oh, Johnny can live on. He can be helping so many people. Is there anybody here that would like to say yes? So even if you've said no, they will approach your family. And I'm going to say something now that is truly horrific. If you're weak-minded, I don't mean that I do mean it in a cantankerous way. Get in here. Now's the time to leave. Everything I've learned now is because of the death of my daughter. And I've really stared evil down in the face. Everyone became an organ donor. In 2017, Jeremy Hunt announced that they were going to be using the air ambulances. You know, the one that you all see at the petrol stations, the service stations. Give us your donations, give us your money. We're so fabulous. We're doing such a wonderful job. He decided to use the air ambulances for, quote, a scouting expedition to see if they could locate organs earlier. A lot of the hospitals have extended their intensive care unit. Brighton Hospital Intensive Care Unit is now huge. It's doubled. You have the National Organ Retrieval Service. You have the SNOD nurse embedded in every department. You don't know who she or he is. On June the 1st, Matt Hancock, old midazolam Matt, of the 9.9 million milligrams. We all know about that. He said that we were going to become the biggest organ donors in the world. I think there's, 69 million of us? Is there not I wouldn't want his organs. Wouldn't want the liver running across the table with whatever's on there. I wouldn't want anyone's organs. I'm totally against it. And by the end of today, I hope everyone in here is as well. He said that we were going to be the biggest organ donors in the world. There's 1.4 billion in India, but how can we be the biggest organ donors in the world? And it's predominantly white people that give their organs up. Now, please don't come and say, oh, she's racist. Please do look at my surname. My children are mixed race. Maybe it's because the Asian people know not to do it. Maybe because the black people among us know not to do it. They say that they require more organs. That's because they're targeting them with all the terrible food and oils. So we have the termination of resuscitation document, the TORS list. I've got all these documents, the TORS list. On that list is all the reasons that will get you terminated. It means you're not going to get food, water, essential healthcare. You've been population triaged. It was on the front paper of the newspapers in 2020. And the editor, I can't remember, it was Telegraph, it was one of those rags, was summoned into Downing Street. Population triage. What it means is, this TORS list, they look at how much it's going to cost to get you back on your feet against your age, your comorbidities, your illnesses, and how much you're going to pay into the system. One of the things on there was Duchenne muscular dystrophy. That always pops up. If you'd been diagnosed with cancer, dementia. One of the things that was particularly horrifying for me was if you'd been down, meaning down as in cardiac arrest, and they didn't know how long. Why is that important? Because then if they use your organs later, you might start to then die in intensive care as the organs fail, depending on how long you've been without oxygen. And I know that from doing my advanced trauma and life support. Another one of the things was if there wasn't a senior paramedic at the scene, again, it would be for those reasons. And these people don't get this rigorous resuscitation. Going back just to the Warwick University Paramedic 1, 2, and 3 trials, Gavin Perkins did a cost-benefit analysis on that, and they said they could only use the adrenaline if it was done with organ harvest to make it cost-benefit. Are you starting to see the picture now? Give you all 1 milligram every 3 to 5 minutes in your leg, sacrifice your brain, and deliver a nice bag of organs to the hospital. The best organ donors are under 30 with a beating heart and a circulation, preferably on a ventilator. So we go back to the sanctity of life, people. Conception begins when the sperm enters the egg. That's it. It even generates light. End of life comes with the cessation of the respiratory center, the cardiac center, and the neurological center, because only then does decay begin. This brainstem test is a lie. It's prehistoric, it's ridiculous. And it was all done to cover up what happened originally with the 2 babies many, many years earlier, when they had to cover up what they'd done, and they came up with this ridiculous test. It really is ridiculous. Please do go and look it up. And rubbing someone's eye with a bit of gauze is one of the things in it. But if you've had enough drugs that will suppress your brain function, which they do, and they're not testing your liver for toxicology or your kidneys, who's to say that you weren't under the influence of those drugs? Now, you can't take an organ from a cadaver, from a dead body, because within 3 to 5 minutes, what starts to happen? Decay begins. So you've got to be very much alive-o. And they give you drugs such as metaraminol, fentanyl, rocuronium. They use these on death row, midazolam. Lots of it. You're not anesthetized so that you're asleep. You're just paralyzed. You can hear, you can see. I think the buffet might not be touched when I've finished. I think it's really important, and I've never been one for tiptoeing, as I've said, and I've watched the murder of my own child. the National Organ Retrieval Service, what they're told is if the person's heart is really beating effectively enough to perfuse the brain when you're trying to take the organs, step away from the person. Step away. Call the anaesthetist and the National Organ Retrieval Service to ask them what to do next. And then get them down to anaesthetize so the patient doesn't suffer. Well, paint me red, white and blue, but I thought that you're dead. So how can you suffer? Standards. This is my favorite page, if there could be one. The National Standards for Organ Retrieval and Deceased Donors. Spinal movements are reported to occur in as many as 50% of brainstem dead patients. While some movements are clearly abnormal, what like breathing? What like opening your eyes? What like fighting back? What about trying to turn away or bringing your knees up? What about sweating profusely, your blood pressure going up, your pulse going up, your eyes opening wide? I've asked a few pathologists, have you ever seen that on a corpse when you're about to do an autopsy? No, never. Please ensure that staff who care for potential brainstem donors are aware of the safety alert. All staff have an adequate knowledge of the etiology, nature, and implications of the spinal movements, and that they clearly understand that such movements do not invalidate its diagnosis. Muscle relaxants are given prior to organ retrieval and are continued until the aorta is cross-clamped. That's the big thing here. Takes the blood with the oxygen up to your brain, cross-clamped. So they keep it all going and then they cross-clamp it. Why would they need to do that if you're dead? Softly, with his song. So this is what they're going to give you again. Suitable doses, suitable drugs, based on a 70-kilogram adult. My daughter weighed 37 kilograms. She was tiny. Size 3 in a shoe. She got these doses in my house, one of them. Very odd. But this is what you're going to get. Rocuronium used on death row. Big dose. And similar drugs. Organ donation and transplantation alert. Again, clinical spinal reflexes. Let's just do a couple of them. And then I'll move swiftly on. Flexor, extensor plantar, stretching your feet and legs out. Abdominal reflex, everything goes tight. I'll bet it does when someone's coming at you with a scalpel. What do you do when someone's going to go? You tense up. Tonic neck reflexes, isolated jerks of the upper extremities. The Lazarus sign, that's where you actually sit up. Head rotation, respiratory-like movements. Respiratory-like movements. Try to breathe. Quadriceps contraction. Eye-opening response. Leg movements. Facial grimacing. Just to say, and I'm not sure whether Isabel covered it, but babies actually feel pain in the womb even more than when they're outside of the womb. It's a natural response to move away from the abdominal wall. There's a very, very famous video called The Silent Scream of a fetus trying to get away from the suction catheter during a termination. Always good to see these things. It will make you fight like everyone's life depends on it. John Ellishaw and Marie Curie. Marie Curie, she's in a lead-lined coffin, isn't she? Irradiating out to the world. A couple of years ago, they came up with the golden line. The golden line, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, where you can get this pack of drugs. And anybody can give it. Your neighbor, paramedics can come in your house, the doctor, the district nurses, anybody, relatives, anybody can give it. It's got all the drugs that are going to take you out of this world very quickly, including hyoscine, which is going to dry up the secretions in your throat so you don't hear your loved one. when they no longer swallow the saliva and you don't get that death rattle. There's a case that's just come to me of a gentleman, and he was in the hospital. I've become a bit of an expert on coronial law, having watched that Banana Republic coroner's court. He was a veteran, over 27 years in the Navy, and then did much more work for the military after that. He's in his 90s, but had been up fixing a roof and everything, and then he goes and has some of those lovely shots in 2020, and everything went downhill. He goes into the hospital, he's walking around, but he's put on end-of-life care, even though he's still walking around. He's given hyoscine to dry up the secretions in his throat, and then he's fed a scone. In your secretions, in your saliva is a thing called ptyalin for digesting starch, and then you've got linguinal lipase for your fat. So now you don't have what you can to digest it, you don't have what you can to get it down your throat. So they took it away because he choked, but then another scone appeared at the next meal, and he did choke. The suction didn't work, the doctors didn't intervene, they pulled the screens around him, and it took 40 minutes for him to choke to death because he was a do not resuscitate. Not a do not chokitate, a do not resuscitate. The National Homicide Service, guaranteed to get you to your final destination at a fraction of the cost. That's just one. I have, I think, 1,800 emails. And not all that, but lots of horror stories. How do I sleep at night like a log? It is a call to action for all of us, because the organ donor really is a real thing. Everyone is an organ donor. Absolutely everybody. And they do want the organs, and they will take the organs from any age now. They're told to just take them even over 80 as practice. Those organs do end up out the country. They're lying to you if they tell you otherwise. There's also patients getting treatment, and they do a thing called fertility preservation. Very interesting, where they're taking the sperm, the eggs, the ovarian tissue. It's also interesting that in 2024, they announced in the news that all of the NHS clinics, the cryostorage, had degraded and they'd lost them all, but they hadn't lost them from the private clinics. Questions, questions, questions. We see lots of young people now being diagnosed with lymphoma. Remember what I said about the Department of Defense and the appropriation? Modified RNA? You wouldn't even be able to fight against Candida, and lymphomas are now going through the roof. The young people are all getting them. The young people that are coming through school now don't realise that they're organ donors. They do not realise that they need to go in and opt out, and that isn't enough. You need to discuss it around your dinner tables. You need to make sure that all your family and friends know that you're not for organ donor, because you might think that you are being cared for to make you survive, but in actual fact, you might be being prepped, because the treatment for saving your organs is a dichotomy from the treatment for saving your life, and you will not know. If you can work your way around an iPhone, you can really work your way around all of this. Have it all in place first. It was the first thing out of my mouth when we arrived in the intensive care. My daughter is not for organ donor. Having cancer does not stop you from being an organ donor. This is a lie as well. They will take other things. Interestingly, we do have a bit of a joke about it. It's black humour and nurses. But when they take the femurs, they replace your leg bones with broom handles. It's in the documents. Broom handles. I always think if there's a shortage of broom handles, I know the organ donors are going up. This is true. We have all the documents. In fact, you can go onto all my social media. I've shared a lot of them. I'm going to finish this, and then I'm going to tell people, and you will be the first, more or less, to know, and I will do it very quickly, about my daughter. We must build a new healthcare system. We cannot build on the old one. It is all doing population triage, and algorithmic medicine is coming in. This is why they don't need to have doctors, they can have associates. You have overseas nurses who have all their dependents. They know that if they don't follow the protocols, they're not insured for a start if you don't follow the protocols, but they're not going to be in a job. This is why the Heritage Party matters, and you stand for freedom, family and nation here, and that means defending the unborn, protecting the young, honouring the elderly and shielding the vulnerable. And the minute we drop, because the LED lights, they've replaced every city with LED lights, will affect everything in your body. Aromatic amino acids at the back of your eye. You need natural light to make chemicals in your body. The most of them are in the retina. You're not going to make them if you don't get natural light. LED lights will make your blood sticky. What's going to happen then? You're going to drop. Who are they going to call? It's not Ghostbusters, it's 999. And out will come the paramedics and their protocols, the paramedic protocols. The Paramedic 3 trial is now up and running, and you're going to be shot in your leg. And the chance of you coming out of that is very small. In that particular study where I said 2.7% make it to the hospital, on the Rankin scale, most of those were 4 to 5 for brain injury, 6 is death. So you're not in a very good state. Building a new healthcare system means having people that are employed in it living in your community, where it's very important for them to get Eric the electrician, Pete the plumber, Bob the builder, Terry the teacher back working, because it affects you. When you have a big sprawling hospital where you've got a barcode on your wristband, people are going to be less inclined to see you as a person. It's inhumane what happens. It must go back to being small. It's the only way that it can happen. We must reject the culture of death and return to the culture of life. And nobody, your palliative nurses, it was in the 2011 Palliative Care Funding Review. It's online, you can see it, the Lansley report. All these same names keep popping up. Page 64, you can scroll down and you can see the age demographics from 2011 to 2031. If you're 18 to 24, you're pretty much guaranteed to be alive. When you get to the 65 plus, the death rate exponentially increases up to 2031, which is quite interesting considering that they go into the care homes and give you shingle shot, pneumonia shot, COVID shot, flu shot. You'd expect them to be living longer, wouldn't you? No, you're dying quicker. So, my friends, I leave you with this word from Scripture. I've set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life so that you and your children may live. Deuteronomy 13:19. Let us be the people who choose life. Let us be the nation that chooses life. For the unborn, for the young, for the elderly, and for the vulnerable. And may God bless each of you, and may God bless the Heritage Party and David Curtin. And may God bless us in the United Kingdom. My daughter was born on the 3rd of April, 2001, Paloma Scarlett Shemirani. She was a twin. She was an IVF baby. She was also a premature baby. She was a cesarean section. It's very important. That means the diaphragm is weak. This is shown in loads of studies. A weak diaphragm in premature babies leads to up above the diaphragm problems, infections, weaknesses, asthma. Lots and lots of problems. This is well known. It's in peer-reviewed studies. They don't tell you this. It's interesting that when they want to kill you, be it end-of-life care, what do? They paralyze the diaphragm. What do they do on death row? They paralyze the diaphragm. The diaphragm is the pump, not the heart. Everything is connected to the diaphragm. Everything. So my daughter called me and she had a mediastinal mass. What I'm going to tell you is not what I found out at the time, it's what I found out later. She goes to a top hospital that's in the top 5 in the country for drug trials. They do a biopsy, and they tell her that she's got a particular diagnosis, but they didn't have enough biopsy to do molecular profiling, so they lied to her. You can only have this treatment, 1 in 5 die during it, and it will destroy your fertility. She decided not to do that. She wanted to do natural. They pursued her through the courts. They wanted to take her right to choose away from her. A 23-year-old Cambridge graduate, a polyglot. She spoke 4 languages. She was an incredibly gifted woman, feisty. Mother and daughter scraps were normal. She was pursued through the courts to the point where they wanted to take me from my home and put in her ex-boyfriend's mother. How can that be? Then we find out that the law firm that's acting pro bono is a law firm that specializes in fertility, posthumous ownership of eggs. They pursued her relentlessly to give up her eggs. She then had 7 months, and then she had what looked like a panic attack. Once we got her notes, we found out there was a heart condition that her twin brother has. This report was in there, an abnormal ECG. They ignored that. When she did get out of the first hospital, she was told she couldn't have a wristband. She wasn't given a wristband in the hospital. They then told her they were giving her a little dose of steroids. And they didn't. They gave her drugs, and they told her it was a saline flush. They gave her drugs without a written consent, which is required by law at that hospital. So then she has a panic attack and passes out. And the rest is history. They entered my home. I was afraid, and I should have never been afraid because of the court case. And I watched them give her adrenaline with a gun in her leg, and I knew it was not right. And then I watched her completely circulatory collapse. She went ashen blue. She'd been breathing up to that point. She was never in cardiac arrest. Their own equipment, it's called contemporaneous primary evidence, the Life Pack 15 showed she had a heartbeat. But what I'm going to tell you all is what I witnessed next at the inquest was incredible. It is a banana republic. From the healthcare, the police, the judicial system, the coroners, it is all so corrupt. And if they can do it to me, they can do it to everybody. And I had to be so on my game. And the one thing the Lord tells me is everything I go through in my life is to teach me so I can serve others. And I've learned coronial law very, very well. And we are all being misled. And it's so important that we don't leave others in charge. We have a coroner in East Sussex who was in jail in 1997 for perverting the course of justice. And now she's a senior coroner. She shouldn't be there. Lying for a detective constable boyfriend. Employed by the council. But this is where I hear people all the time saying, I don't understand politics, I don't understand medicine, I don't understand coronial law. It's really it's simple, it's easy. And if you don't know, ask me. But we have to get into groups and give each of us a job. You learn about this, you learn about this, you learn about this. We can't do it on our own. There's much coming about my daughter, and I hope that you will all come to the private inquest, that we will run ourselves with all the evidence that we have. And David, I thank you very much for asking me to speak today. And as I said, this was my first public speech, and I just needed some time to gather myself. I've really spent so much time sending letters out, hundreds and hundreds. And as I say, if they can do it to me, they'll do it to you very easily. Thank you so much.